The mess hall of the Horizon's Edge was always loud during the evening meal cycle. 200 species traveled aboard this ship, crossing the vast darkness between stars. They came from worlds of ice and worlds of fire. They breathed different air and ate different food. But they all gathered here, in this wide room filled with long tables and floating light panels, to share the simple act of eating together. Voices filled the air in dozens of languages. The universal translators hummed softly, turning strange sounds into meaning. A group of tall Dravine merchants laughed at some private joke, their gray skin wrinkling around their small eyes. Near the window, a family of Orani short, soft-furred creatures with large ears fed their children from shared bowls. Everywhere, there was noise, movement, life. And then Kira walked in. She paused at the entrance for just a moment. Her body was thin and graceful, covered in pale scales that caught the light like morning frost. She was Veloci, a species known for their beauty and their ancient traditions. But Kira was not like other Veloci. Beneath her scales, soft lines of light pulsed gently. Bioluminescence. All Veloci had it, but hers was different. Her light flickered in an uneven rhythm, like a heartbeat that could not find its pace. Among her people, this meant only one thing. She was death-touched. Cursed. A walking bad omen. Kira kept her eyes forward and walked toward the food stations. She felt the change in the room even before she saw it. Conversations grew quieter as she passed. Bodies shifted. Chairs scraped against the floor as aliens moved away from her path. She was used to this. She had been living with it for 5 years now, ever since the elders of her homeworld had examined her markings and declared her unfit to remain. Exile had followed, not with chains or guards, but with silence. Her family had stopped speaking to her. Her friends had turned away. She had left on a transport ship with nothing but a small bag and the knowledge that she would never be welcome anywhere again. Kira collected her food, a simple meal of protein paste and synthetic vegetables, and turned to find a seat. The mess hall was crowded, but finding a place was never hard for her. All she had to do was walk toward any table, and space would appear. She chose a long table near the back. As she approached, a Dravine merchant sitting at the end looked up. His eyes widened. He grabbed his tray and moved to another table without a word. 2 other aliens followed him. Within seconds, Kira had an entire section of the table to herself. She sat down and began to eat. The food was tasteless, but she chewed slowly anyway. It gave her something to do, something to focus on besides the empty chairs around her. She had learned long ago not to look up. Looking up meant seeing the stares, the whispers, the way others pulled their children closer when she walked by. So she kept her eyes on her tray and pretended that she did not care. But her hands shook slightly as she lifted her spoon, and the light beneath her scales flickered faster, betraying the emotions she tried so hard to hide. Across the mess hall, a human man watched her. His name was Tay. He was a pilot for the Galactic Transit Corps, responsible for flying cargo shuttles between the Horizon's Edge and various space stations along their route. He was in his mid-30s, with kind eyes and strong hands that had spent years on ship controls. He sat with his co-pilot, a woman named Nari, who was telling him a story about a broken engine part. But Tay was not listening. He was watching the pale-scaled alien who sat alone. He had noticed her before. It was hard not to. Every time she entered a room, the room changed. People moved away from her like water flowing around a stone. He had seen many things in his years of space travel. He had seen species that hated each other. He had seen old wars and new prejudices. But something about this woman's loneliness touched him in a way he could not explain. "Are you even listening to me?" Nari asked, waving a hand in front of his face. Tay blinked. "Sorry, I was distracted." Nari followed his gaze to the lone figure at the distant table. "Ah, the Veloci." She lowered her voice. "I heard about her. The other passengers say she is cursed. Some kind of death mark. They say if you sit near her, bad luck will follow you." Tay frowned. "Bad luck? That is what they believe." Nari shrugged. "Every species has its superstitions." Tay watched as Kira lifted her spoon again. Her hand was still shaking. He saw the way her shoulders curved inward, as if she was trying to make herself smaller, as if she hoped that if she became small enough, people would stop noticing her at all. He thought about his grandmother back on Earth. She used to tell him stories about the old days, before humans had learned to accept each other. She told him about people who were cast out because of their skin color, because of their beliefs, because of things they could not control. "We spent so much time being afraid of difference," she would say. "And all that fear just made us smaller." "For here." End quote. Tay set down his fork. "What are you doing?" Nari asked. "Something I should have done days ago." He picked up his tray and stood. Nari's eyes widened as she realized what he was about to do. "Tay, you do not have to." "I know," he said. "But I want to." He walked across the mess hall. He felt eyes on him from every direction. A Dravine merchant shook his head in warning. An Orani mother pulled her child closer. Someone whispered something in a language his translator did not catch, but he could guess the meaning. He did not stop. Kira did not notice him until he was standing right beside her table. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were large and silver, like moons reflected in still water. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if she could not understand what she was seeing. Tay smiled gently. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. Kira opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at the empty chairs around her. At least 10 seats. All vacant. All avoided. And here was this human, asking if he could sit. She began, but Tay did not wait for an answer. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down softly. He placed his tray on the table and picked up his fork as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "I am Tay," he said. "I fly the cargo shuttles." "What is your name?" Kira stared at him. Her light flickered beneath her scales, faster now, confused. She waited for him to flinch, to make an excuse and leave, to realize his mistake, but he just sat there, eating his food, looking at her with warm and patient eyes. "Kira," she finally whispered. "My name is Kira." Tay nodded. "Nice to meet you." Kira. And for the first time in 5 years, someone sat beside her. She sat frozen in her chair, her spoon halfway to her mouth, staring at the human across from her. He was eating calmly, as if nothing unusual was happening, as if sitting beside a cursed Veloci was something he did every day. Around them, the mess hall had grown quiet. Not silent, there was still noise, still movement, but the conversations had become softer. Kira could feel the weight of many eyes pressing against her back. She could imagine the whispers spreading from table to table. "Did you see that? The human sat with her. Does he not know? Does he not care?" But Tay did not seem to notice. Or if he did not show it. "The food here is not great," he said, poking at his protein paste with his fork. "But I have had worse. There was this station near the outer rim, I forget the name, where they served something they called nutrient gel. It tasted like wet sand mixed with regret." Kira blinked. "Wet sand? You know. Sand. The tiny rocks on beaches." Tay made a face. "Humans have beaches on our planet. We like to lie on them and do nothing. It is one of our favorite activities." "You lie on rocks? And do nothing?" "Small rocks. Very small. And yes, we do nothing. We call it relaxing." Kira was so confused that she forgot to be afraid. "That sounds uncomfortable." Tay laughed. It was a warm sound, easy and free. "It is a little, but the sun feels nice, and the sound of the water is peaceful." He tilted his head, looking at her with genuine curiosity. "Do Veloci have beaches?" "We have crystal shores," Kira said slowly. She had not talked about her homeworld in a very long time. The words felt strange in her mouth, like a language she had almost forgotten. "The crystals grow along the edges of our seas. They sing when the wind passes through them." "They sing?" "Different tones, depending on their size and shape." Kira paused. "I used to sit and listen to them when I was young." She stopped herself. She was saying too much. sharing too much. She looked down at her tray, waiting for Tay to make an excuse and leave. This was the part where people always left, the moment they realized she was not just quiet, but broken. Cursed. Wrong. But Tay did not leave. "That sounds beautiful," he said simply. "I would like to hear that someday. Singing crystals." He smiled at her. "You must miss it." Kira's throat tightened. She did miss it. She missed it so much that some nights she lay awake in her small cabin and tried to remember the exact sound of the wind through the crystal shores. But no one had ever asked her about it before. No one had ever cared enough to ask. "I do," she whispered. "I miss it very much." They sat in silence for a moment. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was soft, gentle, like the space between breaths. Then footsteps approached, and a voice cut through the quiet. "Making friends again. I see." Kira looked up to find a human woman standing beside the table, holding a tray of food and grinning. She had sharp eyes and short dark hair, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent her whole life in space. "Kira. This is Nari," Tay said. "She is my co-pilot. She thinks she is funny. I do not think I am funny," Nari said, sliding into the seat beside Tay. "I know I am funny. There is a difference." She looked at Kira with open, curious eyes. No fear, no disgust, just interest. "Hello, I am Nari. Tay has been watching you for 3 days, by the way." It was getting a little strange. Tay's face turned slightly red. "I was not watching. I was noticing. You were staring. I was concerned." Nari waved her hand dismissively and turned back to Kira. "Anyway, what are you traveling for? Work? Family? Running away from something terrible?" The question was asked so casually that Kira almost answered honestly, but she caught herself. The truth was too heavy, too painful. She was not ready to share it with strangers. "I am just traveling," she said carefully. "Looking for somewhere to go." Nari nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Ah, a wanderer. I understand. I was like that when I was younger. Spent 6 years jumping from station to station before I met this one." She jerked her thumb at Tay. "He needed a co-pilot. I needed a job. Now we are stuck with each other." "We are not stuck," Tay said. "We are partners." "Same thing." Kira watched them talk, fascinated. She had seen humans before, of course. They were everywhere in the galaxy now, spreading across the stars like seeds in the wind, but she had never really talked to them, never sat with them. She had always kept her distance, afraid that even humans would treat her the same way everyone else did. But these two did not seem to care about her markings. They did not stare at the light flickering beneath her scales. They did not lean away or cover their mouths or make warding signs. They just talked to her like she was a normal person. It was so strange, so unexpected. Kira did not know how to feel. "You have questions," Nari said suddenly, looking at her with knowing eyes. "I can see them on your face. Go ahead. Ask." Kira hesitated. Then, slowly, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since Tay first sat down. "Why?" Nari raised an eyebrow. "Why what? Why are you sitting with me?" Kira's voice was barely above a whisper. "Everyone else avoids me. They think I am cursed. They think my presence will bring them harm, but you." She looked at Tay, then at Nari. "You do not seem to care." The two humans exchanged a glance. Something passed between them, a silent conversation that Kira could not read. Then Tay leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Kira," he said gently, "humans have a long history of treating each other badly because of things that do not matter. The color of our skin, the place we were born, the way we look, or speak, or pray. We spent thousands of years hurting each other for no good reason." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "We are not perfect. We still make mistakes. But we learned something important along the way." He met her eyes. "We learned that the things people fear most are usually the things they do not understand. And we learned that fear is a choice. You can choose to be afraid of what is different, or you can choose to sit down and learn. Kira stared at him. Her light flickered rapidly, cycling through colors she could not control. But my markings, she said. They are a death sign. My own people. Your own people are wrong, Nari said bluntly. I have seen your markings. They are just light. Pretty light, actually. Different from other Veloci. Sure. But different is not dangerous. She shrugged. Humans figured that out eventually. Maybe other species will too. Kira did not know what to say. She felt something cracking inside her, a wall she had built to protect herself from hope. For 5 years, she had believed what her people told her. That she was cursed. That she was unworthy of company. That she would spend the rest of her life alone. But here were 2 humans, sitting with her, telling her that it did not have to be that way. She looked down at her hands. The light pulsed beneath her scales, uneven and strange. She had spent so long hating that light, wishing it would stop, wishing she could be normal. Now, for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, normal was not the only thing worth being. Thank you, she said softly. Tay smiled. You do not have to thank us. We are just eating dinner. Yes, Kira said, but you are eating it with me. The mess hall buzzed around them, full of noise and stares and whispered judgments. But at this small table, in this small moment, none of that seemed to matter. Kira picked up her spoon and took a bite of her food. It still tasted like nothing. But somehow, it felt like the best meal she had eaten in years. 3 days of meals shared at the same table. 3 days of small conversations and easy silences. 3 days of Nari's jokes and Tay's quiet kindness. Kira still did not fully understand why they kept coming back, but she had stopped asking. Some gifts, she decided, were better left unquestioned. On the 4th night, Kira could not sleep. Her cabin was small and dark, but the darkness felt heavy. Memories pressed against her like stones. Her mother's face, turned away. Her father's voice, cold and distant. The elders standing in their circle of judgment, their lights burning steady while hers flickered and danced. She cannot stay, they had said. Her presence endangers us all. Kira sat up in her bed and pressed her hands against her face. The light beneath her scales pulsed softly, painting the walls in pale colors. She hated that light. She had always hated it. It was the reason for everything. The exile, the loneliness, the years of wandering from station to station, never belonging anywhere. She needed air, space, something other than these 4 walls. She left her cabin and walked through the quiet corridors of the ship. Most passengers were asleep at this hour. The halls were empty, lit only by the soft glow of emergency strips along the floor. Her footsteps made no sound. Veloci were light on their feet, another trait her people valued. Silence, grace, perfection. She had never been perfect. Eventually, she found herself at the observation deck. It was a large room at the front of the ship, with a curved window that stretched from floor to ceiling. Beyond the glass, the universe spread out in all directions. Stars like scattered diamonds. Distant nebulas glowing in shades of purple and gold. The endless, dark, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. She was not alone. Tay stood near the window, his hands in his pockets, his eyes on the stars. He turned when he heard her approach, and his face softened into a gentle smile. Could not sleep either? He asked. Kira shook her head. She walked forward and stood beside him, looking out at the vastness beyond the glass. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I used to think space was empty, Tay said quietly. When I was young, I thought it was just nothing. Darkness and distance. But now, he paused, searching for words. Now I see it differently. It is not empty, it is full. Full of light we have not reached yet. Full of places we have not found. Kira considered this. Veloci believed the stars are the eyes of our ancestors, watching us, judging us. She let out a small, bitter laugh. I wonder what they think of me. Tay turned to look at her. His eyes were thoughtful, patient. He did not push. He never pushed. He just waited. As if he had all the time in the universe, something broke inside Kira. A wall. A door. She did not know what made her start talking. Maybe it was the darkness. Maybe it was the stars. Maybe it was 3 days of kindness from a stranger who had no reason to be kind. My markings, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you know what they mean? Tay shook his head. I know other species avoid you because of them. But I do not know why. Kira held up her arm. The light beneath her scales flickered in its uneven rhythm, fast, then slow, then fast again. Never steady, never calm. Among my people, bioluminescence is sacred, she explained. Our light is supposed to pulse in harmony with our hearts. Steady, predictable. It is a sign of balance, of purity. She lowered her arm. My light has never been steady. It has always flickered. Even when I was a child, it moved in patterns that no one could understand. And that makes you cursed? That makes me death-touched. The word tasted like poison on her tongue. My people believe that irregular light is a warning, a sign that death follows close behind. They believe that those who are near me will suffer misfortune, illness, accidents, loss. She laughed again, hollow and sad. My own family believed it. When I was 17, my brother fell ill. It was just a common sickness. He recovered in a week, but my parents blamed me. They said my presence had weakened him. Tay's jaw tightened. He did not interrupt. After that, things got worse, Kira continued. People started avoiding me. Friends stopped speaking to me. When I turned 20, the elders called a council. They decided that I was too dangerous to remain on our world. Her voice cracked. My parents did not fight for me. They stood there in silence while the elders announced my exile. And when I left, my mother would not even look at me. The words hung in the air between them. Kira felt exposed, raw. She had never told anyone the full story before. She had carried it alone for so long that she had almost forgotten how heavy it was. Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. His voice soft but steady. Humans have done terrible things to each other for similar reasons. Kira looked at him, surprised. We used to believe that certain people were cursed because of how they looked, Tay said. Or where they came from. Or who they loved. We created systems to keep them separate. To keep them less than. We told ourselves stories about why they deserved it. Why they were dangerous. He paused. It took us a very long time to learn that we were wrong. That the curse was never in them. It was in us. In our fear. In our need to find someone to blame. He turned to face her fully. The starlight reflected in his eyes. Your people are wrong, Kira. There is nothing cursed about you. Your light is just different. That is all. Different is not dangerous. It is just different. Kira felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back. Veloci were not supposed to cry. It was considered a weakness. Another imperfection. I have tried to believe that, she said. For 5 years, I have tried. But when everyone around you tells you the same thing, when even your own family cannot look at you, it becomes hard to believe anything else. Tay reached out and gently took her hand. His skin was warm against her cool scales. Then let me tell you something different, he said. Your light is beautiful. Kira stared at him. What? Your light. The way it moves. The way it changes. He smiled. I have been watching it for days. It is not scary. It is not a warning. It is like music. Like a song that does not follow the rules but still sounds exactly right. Kira could not speak. No one had ever called her markings beautiful. No one had ever seen them as anything other than a flaw. A defect. A reason to turn away. You do not have to believe me right now, Tay said gently. But I hope someday you will. The ship hummed around them. The stars burned in their ancient light, and Kira stood there, holding a human's hand, feeling something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. It was small, fragile, like a candle in a storm. But it was there. Suddenly, an alarm cut through the silence. Red lights flashed along the walls. A voice crackled over the ship's communication system. Emergency in Cargo Bay 7. All available crew report immediately. Repeat emergency in Cargo Bay 7. Tay's expression changed instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by sharp focus. That is near the shuttle docks, he said. Nari might be there. He let go of Kira's hand and ran toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back at her. Stay safe, he said. And then he was gone. Kira stood alone in the observation deck, the alarm still ringing in her ears. Her light flickered beneath her scales. Faster now, responding to her fear. She thought about staying here. Staying safe. Like Tay had said. That was what she always did. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Stay out of the way. But something had changed. She thought about Tay's words. About his kindness. About the way he had looked at her like she was worth something. And then she ran after him. Crew members ran past Kira, their faces tight with fear. Alarms screamed from every speaker. Red emergency lights painted the walls in shades of blood and warning. The ship shuddered beneath her feet, and she could smell something wrong in the air, a sharp, chemical burn that stung her throat. She followed the flow of bodies toward Cargo Bay 7. With each step, the smell grew stronger. Her eyes began to water. Other species stumbled and coughed, covering their mouths with cloths and sleeves. But Kira kept moving. She found Tay at the entrance to the cargo bay. He stood with a group of crew members, all of them wearing emergency masks and talking in urgent voices. Through the thick glass doors, Kira could see a haze of green gas filling the bay. Warning symbols flashed on every screen. "What happened?" she asked, pushing through the crowd. Tay turned to her, his eyes widening in surprise. "Kira, what are you doing here? I told you to stay safe." "I want to help." Before Tay could respond, a Dravine officer pushed forward. His gray skin was pale with stress, and his small eyes were fixed on Kira with a mixture of fear and anger. "She cannot be here," the officer said sharply. "She will doom us all. Her presence is not the problem right now," Tay cut in, his voice hard. "We have people trapped in there. A containment unit failed. Toxic gas. The ventilation system is not responding." He looked through the glass doors. Nari is in there. And 2 maintenance workers. Kira's heart clenched. Nari. Loud, funny, fearless Nari, who had sat beside her and called her markings pretty. "We need to get them out," she said. "The gas is too thick," another crew member said. He was a tall Urani with trembling whiskers. "We cannot see more than a few meters. If we go in blind, we will get lost. We could make things worse. Then we need to find a way to navigate," Tay said. He turned to a control panel and started pulling up schematics. "There has to be a way to—" "I can do it." Everyone turned to look at Kira. She stepped forward, her scales glowing in the emergency light. Her bioluminescence flickered rapidly, responding to the tension in her body. But she forced herself to speak clearly. "Veloci can sense atmospheric changes," she said. "It is part of our biology. We evolved on a world with shifting weather patterns. Our bodies can detect pressure, temperature, and chemical composition in the air." She met Tay's eyes. "I can feel where the gas is thickest. I can guide you through." The Dravine officer made a sound of disgust. "This is madness. Her kind brings death. We cannot trust her." "Her kind saved 3 crew members on the station at Relay Point 9, said a new voice. Everyone turned. A human man pushed through the crowd. He was younger than Tay, with a calm face and steady hands. A medical kit hung from his shoulder. "Hyun," Tay said, relief in his voice. "The medic from Deck 4. Hyun nodded. "I have treated Veloci before. Their atmospheric sensitivity is real. It is not superstition." He looked at Kira. "If she says she can navigate, I believe her." The Dravine officer opened his mouth to argue, But Tay raised a hand. "We do not have time for this," he said. His voice was calm but firm, the voice of a pilot who had faced emergencies before. "Nari is in there. Every second we waste is a second she does not have." He looked at Kira. "Are you sure you can do this?" Kira thought about all the years she had spent hiding. All the times she had stayed quiet, stayed invisible, let others push her away. She thought about Tay sitting beside her in the mess hall, about Nari calling her markings pretty, about the hope she had felt just minutes ago on the observation deck. "Yes," she said, "I am sure." Tay nodded once. "Then let us go." They put on emergency masks, all except Kira, whose Veloci biology could filter the toxins for a short time. The cargo bay doors hissed open, and the green gas rolled out like fog from a nightmare. Kira stepped forward first, and Tay followed close behind. Hyun came third, his medical kit ready. The gas was thick. Kira could barely see her own hands in front of her face. The chemical smell was overwhelming now, even through her natural filters. Her lungs burned, her eyes stung, but beneath her skin, her bioluminescence pulsed, and she focused on what her body was telling her. The gas moved in currents. She could feel it, the pressure shifts, the temperature changes, the subtle flow of contaminated air through the bay. It was like listening to music that only she could hear, a song of poison and danger, but a song with patterns, with paths. "This way," she said, turning left. "The gas is thinner here. There is a pocket of clean air near the wall." They moved forward. Kira guided them around containers and machinery, following the invisible map in her mind. Twice, she stopped them just before they walked into clouds of concentrated toxin. Once, she led them through a narrow gap between storage units that the gas had not yet reached. Behind her, she heard Tay coughing through his mask. The filters were working, but not perfectly. They did not have much time. "How much further?" Hyun asked. Kira closed her eyes and focused. She felt a shift in the air, a disruption in the gas patterns. Breathing. Body heat. Life. "There," she said, pointing ahead. "I can feel them. 20 meters. They pushed forward. The gas grew thinner as they moved, and soon Kira could see shapes through the haze. 3 figures huddled against the far wall, near an emergency air vent that was pumping clean oxygen into a small bubble of safety. Nari looked up as they approached. Her face was pale, her breathing labored, but her eyes lit up when she saw Tay. "About time," she rasped. "I was starting to get bored." "Can you walk?" Tay asked, kneeling beside her. "I can try." The 2 maintenance workers were in worse shape. One was unconscious, and the other could barely stand. Hyun immediately began checking their vital signs, his hands moving with practiced speed. "We need to move now," he said. "This one needs real medical attention." 205. End quote. Tay lifted the unconscious worker over his shoulder. Hyun supported the other one. Nari leaned on a container, trying to find her balance. "Kira," Tay said, "get us out of here." Kira turned back toward the entrance. The gas had shifted while they were rescuing the others. The path they had taken was now blocked by a thick cloud of green poison, but Kira focused, felt the currents, and found another way. "Follow me," she said. "Step exactly where I step. Do not fall behind." They moved through the cargo bay like ghosts. Kira led them around corners, through gaps, under pipes. She felt the gas pressing in around them, hungry and patient. But she did not let it touch them. She guided them through every safe pocket, every thin spot, every path that her senses could find. And then, finally, they burst through the cargo bay doors and into the clean air of the corridor. Crew members rushed forward to help. Hyun and his medical team took over, carrying the injured workers toward the medical bay. Nari collapsed against a wall, coughing but alive. Tay pulled off his mask and took a deep breath. Then he turned to Kira. "You did it," he said. "You saved them." Kira looked at her hands. Her bioluminescence was pulsing wildly, exhausted from the effort. But beneath the fatigue, she felt something else. Something she had not felt in a very long time. Pride. The Dravine officer stood nearby, staring at her. His expression was unreadable. He did not apologize. He did not thank her. But he also did not look away. And when Kira met his eyes, he gave a small, almost invisible nod. It was not forgiveness. It was not acceptance. But it was something. Hyun approached her, wiping his hands on a cloth. He was tired, but his eyes were warm. "You did good," he said simply. 3 words, simple and plain. But to Kira, they meant everything. She looked around at the corridor full of crew members. At Tae, who was helping Nari to her feet. At Hyun, who was already preparing to return to the medical bay. At the Dravine officer, who had stopped calling her cursed. For 5 years, she had believed she brought nothing but death. Tonight, she had helped bring life. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start changing the story. By morning, everyone on the horizon's edge had heard some version of the story. The cursed Veloci had entered the toxic cargo bay. She had guided the rescue team through the poison. She had saved 3 lives, including the human co-pilot that everyone liked. The reactions were mixed. Some species simply did not believe it. Impossible? A Dravine merchant muttered over his breakfast. The death-touched cannot bring life. There must be some other explanation. Others accepted the facts, but refused to change their opinions. One good act does not erase the curse, an elderly Veloci traveler insisted. The misfortune will come. It always comes. But a few began to wonder. Kira noticed the change in small ways. When she walked through the corridors now, not everyone moved away. Some still did, of course. Old fears do not vanish overnight, but others simply looked at her and then continued on their way. No gasps. No warning signs. Just acceptance that she existed in the same space as them. It was not much. But it was more than she had ever had before. The biggest change was at the mess hall. On the first day after the incident, Kira walked in, expecting the usual empty table. Instead, she found Tae, Nari, and Hyun already waiting for her. Nari grinned when she saw her. She was still pale from her ordeal, and she coughed occasionally, but her spirit was unbroken. "There she is," Nari announced loudly. "The hero of Cargo Bay 7. The Veloci who does not believe in curses." "Please stop," Kira said, her scales flushing with embarrassment. "Never." Nari pulled out a chair. "Sit. You earned this seat." Kira sat down with them. For the first time, she did not feel like she was taking up space that did not belong to her. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They ate together, talking about nothing and everything. Tae told stories about his early days as a pilot. When he had crashed 3 shuttles in his first year, Nari made jokes about the terrible quality of the ship's food. Hyun quietly shared medical facts that no one had asked for but everyone found interesting. And Kira laughed. Actual laughter. Rising up from somewhere deep inside her. It felt strange. Rusty. Like a door that had not been opened in years. But it felt good. On the second day, something new happened. Kira was sitting with her human friends when she felt a presence at her side. She looked up to find a small Orani child standing beside her table. The child was young, maybe 5 or 6 in human years, with soft brown fur and enormous dark eyes. It held a small toy in its tiny paws, clutching it like a treasure. Behind the child, its parents stood at a distance, watching nervously. "Hello," the child said in a high, clear voice. Kira blinked, surprised. "Hello. You are shiny," the child said, pointing at Kira's scales. "I like shiny things." Kira did not know what to say. She glanced at the child's parents. They looked terrified. But they did not pull their child away. "Thank you," Kira said finally. I like your toy." The child beamed. It held up the toy, a small figure of some kind of animal. "This is Momo. He is my friend." "Do you have a friend?" Kira thought about Tae sitting across from her. About Nari and Hyun. About the way they had welcomed her without question or condition. "Yes," she said. "I have friends." The child nodded seriously, as if this was very important information. Then, before Kira could react, it reached out and touched her hand. Its small paw was warm against her cool scales. "You are nice," the child said. "Mama said you were scary, but you are not scary. You are just different." Kira felt her throat tighten. "Different is not always bad," she managed to say. "I know," the child said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. Then it turned and ran back to its parents, already chattering about something else. The Orani parents looked at Kira for a long moment. The mother gave a small, uncertain nod. Then they turned and led their child away. Nari let out a low whistle. "Well, that was something. Children see clearly," Hyun said thoughtfully. "They have not learned the fears that adults carry." Tae reached across the table and squeezed Kira's hand. "Are you okay?" Kira nodded. But her eyes were shining with tears she refused to let fall. On the third day, something even more unexpected happened. The Veloci diplomat approached her. Kira had seen him on the ship before. He was older, with deep green scales and bioluminescence that pulsed in perfect, steady rhythms. The kind of Veloci who had probably never been different a day in his life. He had watched her from across rooms with a mixture of discomfort and fascination. But he had never spoken to her. Now he stood beside her table, his posture stiff with uncertainty. "May I speak with you?" he asked. "In private?" Kira glanced at her friends. Tae gave her an encouraging nod. "Okay," she said. They walked to a quiet corner of the mess hall, away from listening ears. The diplomat stood, with his hands clasped behind his back, like someone preparing to deliver a formal statement. "I witnessed what you did," he said, "in the cargo bay. I have also been watching how the humans treat you." Kira waited. "I was raised to believe certain things about those with your condition," he continued. His voice was careful, measured. "I was taught that the flickering light was a warning, a sign of corruption, of danger." He paused. "I believed those teachings for my entire life. And now?" Kira asked. The diplomat was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Now I am not certain what I believe." He looked at her directly. "You saved lives. You showed courage. These are not the actions of a curse. They are the actions of a person." He hesitated. "I am not ready to abandon everything I was taught. But I am reconsidering." Kira did not know what to say. This was not an apology. It was not acceptance, but it was honesty, and that was something. "Thank you for telling me," she said. The diplomat nodded. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and touched his chest, a Veloci gesture of acknowledgement. It was not the gesture used for equals. It was something smaller, more tentative, but it was a beginning. He turned and walked away. Kira returned to her table, where her friends were waiting. "What was that about?" Nari asked. "Change," Kira said slowly. "Small change, but change." Tae smiled. "That is how it always starts. One small change at a time." Kira looked around the mess hall. At the Urani child waving at her from across the room. At the Veloci diplomat returning to his seat with a thoughtful expression. At the Dravine merchant who was carefully not looking at her, but who had also not moved away. For 5 years, she had believed that she would always be alone. That the curse would follow her forever. That nothing would ever change. Now, for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a different future. One where she was not defined by the things others feared. One where she could simply be herself. "Do you know what I realized?" she said quietly. "What?" Tae asked. Kira looked down at the table. At the seats filled with people who cared about her. At the space that finally felt like it belonged to her. "I spent so long waiting for the galaxy to accept me," she said. "But maybe that is not what matters. Maybe what matters is finding the people who already do." She looked up at Tae, at Nari, at Hyun. "Thank you. For sitting with me. For seeing me. For not being afraid." Tae reached across the table and took her hand. "You do not owe anyone forgiveness," he said gently. "But you deserve to take up space. Never forget that." Kira nodded. And for the first time, she truly believed it. Kira was in her cabin, preparing for sleep, when her communication terminal chimed. She almost ignored it. No one had sent her a message in years. The few contacts she had made along the way, temporary employers, station administrators, had no reason to reach out. But something made her check. When she saw the sender, her blood turned cold. The message was from her homeworld. From her family. Kira stared at the screen for a long time. The words blurred in front of her eyes. Her bioluminescence flickered wildly beneath her scales, cycling through colors she could not control. 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of being forgotten, abandoned, erased. And now, suddenly, they wanted to talk. She did not open the message. Not that night. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions she could not answer. Why now? What did they want? Did they finally regret what they had done? Or was this some new cruelty? Some final rejection she had not anticipated? She did not sleep. In the morning, Tay found her in the mess hall. One look at her face told him something was wrong. What happened? He asked, sitting down across from her. Kira told him about the message. She kept her voice steady, but her hands shook as she spoke. Have you opened it? Tay asked. No, I do not know if I can. Nari and Hyun arrived a few minutes later. They listened as Kira explained the situation. When she finished, there was a long silence. What do you want to do? Nari asked. Her voice was gentle, without its usual teasing edge. I do not know, Kira admitted. Part of me wants to delete it. Pretend it never came. They chose to abandon me. Why should I give them the chance to hurt me again? And the other part? Hyun asked. Kira was quiet for a moment. The other part wants to know what they have to say. Even if it hurts. Even if it changes nothing. She looked down at her hands. They are still my family, even after everything. Tay leaned forward. You do not have to decide right now. You do not have to decide at all. But if you do open it, we will be here. Whatever it says. Kira looked at him. At Nari and Hyun. At the 3 humans who had become more of a family to her than her own blood had been in years. Will you stay with me? She asked. When I read it? Of course, Tay said. They moved to a private communication room. Kira sat in front of the terminal, her friends standing behind her. She took a deep breath. Her light flickered nervously. Then she opened the message. A face appeared on the screen. A face Kira had not seen in 5 years. Her mother. She looked older than Kira remembered. Her scales had faded to a paler shade, and there were lines around her eyes that had not been there before. Her bioluminescence pulsed slowly, steadily, the perfect rhythm that Kira had never been able to achieve. Kira. Her mother's voice was soft, uncertain. I was not sure this message would reach you. I was not sure you would want to hear from me. Kira said nothing. She could not speak. She could barely breathe. News travels far. Her mother continued. Even to our world. We heard about what happened on the transit ship. About what you did. The rescue. The lives you saved. She paused. Some here are calling you a hero. Others are calling you a heretic. The elders are divided. Kira felt a bitter laugh rising in her throat. Of course they were divided. Even now, even after everything, they could not simply accept her. They had to argue about it, debate it, turn her life into a political discussion. I did not call to tell you about the elders, her mother said. I called to tell you something else. Something I should have said a long time ago. She paused again. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I should not have let them take you without fighting. The words hung in the air. Kira felt them like a blow to her chest. When the council made their decision, I was afraid, her mother continued. Afraid of what the elders would do. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of your light, and what it meant, and whether it would truly bring misfortune. She closed her eyes. I let my fear silence me. I stood there and watched them send you away, and I said nothing. Tears were streaming down Kira's face now. She did not try to stop them. "I have regretted it every day since," her mother said. "Every day, I have thought about you, wondered where you were, whether you were safe, whether you were alone." Her voice broke. "I am sorry, Kira. I know it is not enough. I know words cannot undo what was done. But I needed you to know. I needed you to hear it." The message ended. The screen went dark. Kira sat in silence. Her body was shaking. Her light flickered through every color, every pattern, reflecting the storm inside her. Tay moved to her side and knelt beside her chair. "Kira," he said softly. She turned to look at him. Her face was wet with tears, her expression shattered. "She was afraid," Kira whispered. "She was just afraid." "Yes, it does not make it right." "No, it does not." "But she apologized." Kira's voice cracked. "After 5 years. After everything. She finally said she was sorry." Tay did not try to tell her how to feel. He did not offer easy comfort or simple answers. He just reached out and took her hand, holding it gently. "How do you feel?" he asked. Kira thought about the question. She searched inside herself, looking for an answer. "Broken," she said finally. "But also, I relieved. I spent so long thinking they had forgotten me, thinking I did not matter. But she remembered. She thought about me. She regretted what happened." She took a shaky breath. "It is not forgiveness. I do not know if I can forgive her, but it is something. It is more than I had before." Nari stepped forward and placed a hand on Kira's shoulder. "You do not have to decide anything right now. You do not have to respond. You can take all the time you need." "She is right," Hyun added. "Healing is not a race. It takes as long as it takes." Kira nodded. She wiped her face with trembling hands. They stayed in the communication room for a long time. No one pushed her to talk. No one tried to fill the silence with empty words. They just sat with her, present and patient, while she processed years of pain and loneliness. Finally, Kira spoke. "You humans," she said softly. "You just sit with people." Tay smiled. "It is the least we can do." "Sometimes it is the most," Kira whispered. She looked at him. At Nari and Hyun. At these strange, warm, impossible creatures who had crossed the galaxy and somehow found her. Who had seen her at her most broken and had not looked away. "When I was exiled," she said, "I thought my life was over. I thought I would wander forever, alone, until I faded away and no one noticed. I thought I was cursed. Just like they said. I thought I deserved to be abandoned." She took a deep breath. "But then you sat down beside me, and everything changed." Her voice was steady now, strong. "I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if my people will ever truly accept me. I do not know if my mother and I will ever be okay. But I know one thing. I know one thing." "What?" Tay asked. Kira looked at him with eyes that were red from crying but clear with understanding. "I am not alone anymore, and that is enough. That is more than enough." Tay squeezed her hand. "You were never cursed, Kira," he said quietly. "You were just waiting for people who could see you clearly." Kira let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 5 years. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." And in that small room, surrounded by stars and strangers who had become family, Kira finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from pain, but from the overwhelming relief of being found. Kira stood at the observation deck and watched as the massive space station grew larger in the window. It was built in the shape of a wheel, spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. Ships of every size and shape moved around it, like fish around a reef. After 2 weeks in transit, the journey was finally ending. For most passengers, this was a moment of excitement. They had destinations waiting for them. Families, jobs, homes. They rushed to pack their belongings and prepare for arrival, eager to step onto solid ground again. But Kira had nowhere to go. She had boarded the horizon's edge with no plan, no destination, just a need to keep moving, to stay ahead of the loneliness that always caught up with her eventually. She had purchased a ticket to Station Kepler because it was the farthest point on the route, and farther had always felt safer. Now, standing at the window, she realized she had no idea what to do next. Thinking deep thoughts, Kira turned to find Nari standing behind her, a crooked smile on her face. The human looked healthier now, recovered from her ordeal in the cargo bay. Her eyes were bright with their usual mischief. Just wondering what comes next, Kira admitted. That is the question, is it not? Nari walked forward and stood beside her, looking out at the station. I used to hate this part. The ending of a journey. Everyone goes their separate ways, and you wonder if you will ever see them again. Does it get easier? No, Nari said honestly. But sometimes the endings are not really endings. Sometimes they are just pauses. Spaces between one adventure and the next. Kira considered this. You sound like a poet. Do not tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Nari spoke again. Tay wanted me to find you. He said there is something he wants to discuss before we dock. Kira felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest. What is it? Nari just smiled. Come with me. It is better if he tells you himself. They walked together through the corridors of the ship. The halls were busy now, filled with passengers carrying luggage and saying their goodbyes. Several aliens looked at Kira as she passed. A few still looked away, their old fears unchanged, but others nodded at her. A young Orani child waved enthusiastically. A Dravine merchant who had witnessed the cargo bay rescue gave her a small bow of acknowledgement. Small changes, tiny ripples in a very large ocean, but ripples nonetheless. They found Tay in one of the shuttle bays, running checks on his cargo shuttle. It was a sturdy little ship, weathered from years of service but clearly well maintained. Hyun was there too, organizing medical supplies in a corner. Tay looked up when Kira entered. His face broke into a warm smile. There you are, he said. I was hoping to catch you before the docking rush. Nari said you wanted to talk to me. I do. Tay wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward her. He seemed nervous, which was strange. Kira had never seen him nervous before. What is wrong? She asked. Nothing is wrong, Tay said. I just have a question to ask you. And I wanted to ask it properly. He took a deep breath. Kira. In a few hours, this ship is going to dock at Station Kepler. Everyone is going to go their separate ways. Nari and Hyun and I are heading to the outer rim for our next cargo run. It is a long journey. About 3 months. Kira nodded, not sure where this was going. We have been talking, Tay continued. The three of us. And we realized something. Our shuttle. It needs a navigator. Someone who can read atmospheric conditions, who can sense pressure changes and chemical compositions in the air. Someone who can guide us through difficult spaces. He paused. Someone like you. Kira stared at him. What? We are asking you to join our crew, Nari said, grinning widely. Officially, not as a passenger, as one of us. Your abilities are remarkable, Hyun added quietly. And more than that, you fit with us. You belong with us. Kira could not speak. She could barely think. Her bioluminescence flickered rapidly beneath her scales, reflecting her shock. I know it is a big decision, Tay said gently. And I know you have been on your own for a long time. You do not have to answer right now. You do not have to answer at all, but I wanted you to know that there is a place for you here. If you want it. Kira looked at him. At Nari, who was practically bouncing with excitement. At Hyun, who nodded encouragingly. At the shuttle that could become her home. For 5 years, she had wandered. From station to station, ship to ship, always moving, never belonging. She had told herself that she did not need anyone, that she was better off alone, that the curse that had driven her from her homeworld would only hurt anyone who got too close. But these humans had gotten close. They had sat beside her when no one else would. They had seen her at her worst and had not looked away. They had become her family in every way that mattered. Yes, she said. Tay blinked. Yes? Yes. Kira felt a smile spreading across her face, a real smile. one that reached all the way to her eyes. "I want to join your crew. I want to stay with you." Nari let out a whoop of joy and threw her arms around Kira. It was such a human gesture, so warm and unexpected, that Kira froze for a moment. Then, slowly, she hugged her back. "Welcome to the team," Nari said. "We are going to have so much fun." "Fun is one word for it," Hyun said dryly. "Chaos is another." Tae stepped forward and placed a hand on Kira's shoulder. His eyes were bright. "You made the right choice," he said quietly. "This is where you belong." Kira nodded. For the first time in 5 years, she truly believed it. 2 hours later, the Horizon's Edge docked at Station Kepler. The passengers disembarked in waves. Kira walked through the corridors one last time, saying silent goodbyes to the ship that had changed her life. She passed the mess hall where Tae had first sat beside her, the observation deck where she had watched the stars and learned to hope again, the cargo bay where she had discovered that she was not a curse, but a gift. At the boarding ramp, she paused and looked back. A crowd of passengers was moving around her. Most paid her no attention, but a few stopped. A few looked. The Orani child she had befriended broke away from its parents and ran toward her. It wrapped its small arms around her leg in a tight hug, then darted away before Kira could react. The Veloci diplomat stood at a distance, watching. When Kira met his eyes, he raised his hand to his chest, the gesture of respect for the departed that she had seen many times before. But then, slowly, he changed it. He opened his hand and turned it outward, toward the light. A blessing for the living. Kira felt tears prickling at her eyes. She nodded at him once, then turned and walked toward the shuttle bay. Tae, Nari, and Hyun were waiting for her at the shuttle. Their home. Her home now, too. "Ready?" Tae asked. "Ready." They boarded together. Kira took her place at the navigation console, running her hands over the controls. The screens lit up with atmospheric readings and stellar maps. It felt natural. It felt right. The shuttle lifted off from the station and turned toward the stars. The outer rim waited for them, full of unknown dangers and new adventures. But Kira was not afraid. She looked out the window at the endless dark, at the lights of distant worlds she had never seen, at the future that stretched out before her, uncertain but no longer lonely. Behind her, Nari was telling a joke that made Hyun groan. Tae was laughing quietly, shaking his head. The shuttle hummed around them, carrying them forward into the unknown, and Kira sat among them, her bioluminescence pulsing softly beneath her scales. It flickered in its uneven rhythm, the same as it always had. But now she did not hate it. Now she did not fear it. It was just her light, her music, her own strange, beautiful song. She thought about her mother, back on her homeworld, about the message that still sat unanswered in her communication files. Someday, she might respond. Someday, she might find the words. But not today. Today, she was moving forward. She thought about the galaxy, vast and ancient and full of fear, full of species that hated what they did not understand, full of old superstitions and deep prejudices that might never change. But she also thought about small moments. A human sitting down softly beside her, a child calling her markings pretty, a diplomat opening his hand toward the light. The galaxy was vast, and most of it would never understand her. But she no longer needed the whole galaxy. She just needed a seat at the table and someone willing to sit beside her, and she had found that. Against all odds, in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected people, she had found exactly where she belonged. Kira smiled and turned back to her console. "Setting course for the outer rim," she said, and together, they flew into the stars.